So let's start out here by diving into building the cockpit coaming for your skin-on-frame kayak. Now, this is something I like to do at the beginning of my kayak build because not only does it get the most difficult part of the building process out of the way, but it also gives me an interior length that I can use to determine how far apart to spread the deck beams in the cockpit location while I'm initially laying out my kayak gunnels. Now, steam bending your own cockpit can be fun and rewarding, or it can be incredibly difficult and frustrating depending on the quality of the wood that you're using and the techniques that you're using to bend that wood. Now, if you're just building a Greenland style cockpit like this one back here, you can get away with lower quality wood because the bend isn't very steep and also the wood doesn't need to be as long. But if you're building one of my modern keyhole style cockpit coamings here with the really tight radius at the top, you're gonna need a full 8 feet of primo quality bending wood. And your decision about whether you want to build one of these yourself or whether you just want to buy one of these off my site might depend on whether you can get your hands on good quality bending wood in the first place. Now, if you do decide to build your own coaming here, there's a couple things you're going to want to think about. And the first one is whether you're going to go with a single or a double lip. A single 1/2-inch lip coaming is going to be positive enough to hold a spray skirt while you're rolling, or even if you're getting pounded in heavy surf. But if you want to pair that with a C-sock, you're going to need to go up to a full 3/4 of an inch that I usually build up out of 2 3/8 of an inch strips. Now, the topic of whether or not to use a C-sock is kind of complicated, so you're going to have to check out a separate video I made on the subject. Personally, I don't use C-socks, but I can think of situations in which they make a lot of sense, so you'll just have to check that out and then watch the building process and decide what makes sense for you. Something that is worth considering is that it is easier to bend 2 3/8 of an inch lips than it is to bend 1/2-inch lip, which means you could potentially do this with slightly lower quality wood and have successful results, although it is a little more challenging when you get to the back of the coaming because weaving 4 tails together before you run out of steaming time is obviously harder than weaving 2 sets of tails. So you'll have to check out the video and then decide what makes sense for you. So I think what I want to do here is just walk you through the super efficient process that I've developed over the last 15 years to make steam bending your cockpit coaming as easy as it possibly can be. We're going to go over selecting your wood, cutting your wood, building your bending jig, measuring for your coaming and measuring for your coaming lips, setting up your steam bending station, different recommendations for steaming times, and then finally all the different steaming techniques, so you can make something like this happen with as little stress and as little frustration and as little broken wood as possible. Now, if while you're watching these videos this seems a little bit intimidating to you, don't feel like you can't build a skin-on-frame kayak. Steam bending a keyhole cockpit coaming like this right here is literally twice as hard as anything else you're going to do in the kayak building process. So if you don't want to deal with this, just pick one of these up off our site and then the rest of your kayak build is going to be super easy. Now, also think about picking up one of our steam bent kayak cockpit coaming plans. This is going to have all of the detailed information that we're going to be covering in the next 5 or 6 videos. There's technical drawings in here. I'm going to be including my sizing information for your hips and also for your leg length. And finally, I'm going to add 3 videos from my paid courses, which is stitching this down onto the skin, adding thigh braces, and finally how to add a back band to this so you can have the most comfortable skin-on-frame kayak possible. Whether it's our Greenland paddle plans or a set of these coaming plans, purchasing an inexpensive plan set from us really helps to support all the free content that we put out here on the website. So thinking about picking up a set of plans here. If you're taking our kayak building course already, a lot of this information is going to be included, although this does go into a finer level of detail if that interests you. So that's pretty much it for the introduction here. Next up, let's get started by building the kayak cockpit bending jig.